What's up, guys? Welcome back to Santa's College Football Podcast. Me and Josh are back here to talk about the matchups between the Ohio State and Clemson game. We haven't been on here in a while, but I'm glad to be back, and we get to talk some football. So that's always a good thing. We didn't even know if we were going to have a season at the beginning of the year, so I'm glad we made it this far. And we're almost to the playoffs, and COVID's going to be kind of a lingering factor up until the final buzzer of the national championship game. But hopefully we can make it to then without any major issues with any football teams in the playoffs, and obviously other teams as well. But just saw that the Music City Bowl got canceled, so that stinks for Missouri and Iowa. But let's go ahead and we're going to talk about Ohio State Clemson. So today we're kind of brush over the different matchups, like the different quarterbacks versus the opposing team's defenses, offensive lines versus defensive lines, wide receivers versus defensive backs, just basic stuff like that. So I'll go ahead and start first, and then Josh can kind of add in his 2 cents about it, and we can just kind of go back and forth here. So the first thing, and I put a lot of time into this. We were actually quarantined for the basketball team. I actually tested negative today, so that's good. So I'm out of quarantine. I'm done with that. I've already been through that once. But anyways, on to this. Quarterbacks versus defenses. We're going to start off with Fields. He's kind of been playing shaky these past couple of games, and I know people are going to say, he hasn't played good against his top two teams. Well, this is what I'll say. He didn't have Olave, and it's hard to go in. And I know that doesn't make excuses for how he played. He should have definitely played better than he did against Northwestern. But having Olave there was someone that I didn't think obviously he's a great player, but I thought that Fleming could step right in and, be that safety blanket kind of like Olave did. But the way Olave is able to get open compared to those freshman receivers are able to get open and be that safety blanket and be that third progression guy and that guy that you're just going to check the ball down to and get an easy first down with is a lot different and something that Fields obviously needs in this matchup against Clemson. And I wasn't for sure because 11 Warriors said, and everybody's like, oh, Ryan Day said that Chris Olave is going to be back. They actually posted a picture of him practicing today in the Woodies. But that was from Gene Smith, the athletic director at Ohio State. So that's a good thing. So they're going to have him back for that matchup. Hopefully they'll have Baron Browning back and some of those other guys. But it's just been hard to kind of judge this Ohio State team because they've had multiple games canceled. They've only played 6 games. They haven't had all their guys back really for about, I'd probably say 4 games or 3 games. They've had a fully healthy roster. But it's just been weird. And it's hard for them. And I know people are going to say they're going to be rested and all this stuff. But the downfall to that, and I think it's more of a downfall than it is a positive, is that you're not going to be able to build that chemistry like those teams have when they had 11 to 12 games to play and be able to work your kinks out. Because right now where Ohio State is where Clemson was when they played the Boston College game. And they had their problems, but they've been able to play more games and be able to work those kinks out and be able to grow and get better from that. And I'm not saying that because obviously being rested is an advantage, but I think it's more of an advantage to be able to play more games and not. And Ohio State obviously wanted to push. It wasn't their choice to play 6 games this year. So I think that has kind of hurt Fields not able to, because I think if you give him 3 more games, he's probably getting talked about with Heisman, probably not going to win it just based off of his few performances that he had that weren't stellar. But some knocks on him and some things that he needs to do in this game that would definitely help him is not hold on to the ball so much. He likes to hold on to the ball because he likes to be able to use his athletic ability to get outside the pocket whenever, he wants his wide receivers are really good. So he wants them to be able to run their routes and get down the field. And he knows if he's getting pressured, he can just take off and go most of the time. But I don't think he's going to be able to do that as much against Clemson's defense, obviously, because they're more talented and they're going to be able to get home more than, Northwestern or Michigan State or whoever from the Big Ten would be. So I think that's another thing. I think he's got to get the ball quick, especially on those third downs when Clemson loves to blitz. They love to blitz. I went back. I went back and watched the 2019 Ohio State Clemson game. I watched every play. I'm kind of pain to watch, but I went back and watched it all, and I noticed that almost every third down they blitz, and they played a lot of zone defense in the red zone. So that's just another thing. He's got to get the ball off. He's got to have that check down. That's what Sermon's got to be. And Dobbins was that last year. They just weren't able to convert a couple times. But I think that's a big thing going to be for him is be able to get the ball off in time. Ohio State's offensive line obviously got to be good for him. And I think his athletic ability is going to be able to help him get out of some situations and let his receivers do some things, but ultimately get the ball out and not allow Clemson's defensive line to get home, which obviously hurt him in Indiana and Northwestern, which is some of the knocks on him and why he didn't do so well in those games. And he tried to do a little too much sometimes too in the Indiana game specifically. So that's my breakdown of Fields versus the Clemson defense. And Josh is going to take over on Lawrence against the Ohio State defense.
Okay. Before I get there, I want to touch on, as you kind of touch over what you said. Obviously, we weren't even supposed to have a season, so this is awesome.
Yeah.
Just to have it, it's crazy. I was so certain, no high school, no college, no NFL in about August, and it's crazy how everything changed so quickly.
Yep.
As you said, this game does seem kind of familiar. Happened last year, and it's been kind of a theme. I think it's like the fourth time in the past 10 years or so. We seem to find each other.
Yep.
As you said, Fields, great quarterback. He's started off slow, and as a Clemson fan, I've seen that Deshaun Watson had a lot of great years where, like in particular the 2016 year, he started off really, really slow. He looked really bad. And when you get a guy like Fields who can, if he had more games, who knows, he'd probably settle in. He'd probably – and I'm kind of with you there. I think that the extra rest, quote unquote, hurts Ohio State more than it helps. I think it's different, but I think no doubt Fields is way too talented to be doing as poorly as he is. Not really even poorly. He's just he hadn't warmed up into the season like everyone else has. But and I'd assume he's still going to be drafted second, and Trevor will be drafted first. So it won't hurt him too bad. Going on to Trevor, he's done pretty good this year. He's been able to put it all together. He hasn't really put up just crazy numbers throughout. We haven't really had to rely on him. And I say we, if you don't know, I'm a Clemson fan. Haven't really had to rely on him. Every game that he has played, every game that he's started, we've pretty much dominated. You had the two games where Uyangalele came in because he was out with COVID. And we did all right there. We split those two. But Trevor is a game changer, and if I had a vote, I would vote for him as Heisman. I think he's that good. I think he can be that talented, and certainly he'll have to be that talented. So the matchup I really look forward to is Trevor's pass game. He's got a bunch of young guys. There's no T. Higgins this year. There's no Justin Ross. Justin's hurt. Ohio State really has to put up with E.J. Williams. They're going to have to put up with Amari Rodgers and Cornell Powell. And those three have really emerged. They've emerged as some very good receivers this year. I've been thoroughly impressed. And as we've said, we don't know a lot about Ohio State yet. Y'all do have a really young defensive backfield, only one returner. And that's the key matchup in this game. I think if Trevor Lawrence can get good if we can throw good, if Trevor can get into a rhythm and the receivers win the battle against Ohio State's defensive backs, I think that's where Clemson wins the game. And likewise, I think Ohio State has the edge in Clemson's run game. So Clemson will have to rely more on their passing. I think Trevor's going to be no doubt. He's going to be good. It all really depends on the wide receivers and how they match up against Ohio State's defensive backs. I think that's all I have to say. Let's see. Oh, also, the Clemson's offensive line versus Ohio State's defensive line. Obviously, neither one is, I would say, as good as last year's. Y'all lost Chase Young, and we lost 4 starters. And so Clemson's offensive line has been a pain all year. They just really haven't been able to settle in and assert themselves, which they never really are great. But this year, it really shows. And it'll be interesting to see when Clemson plays a really good team, how that offensive line will hold up.
I've been trying to look at some stats on like sacks allowed and stuff like that, and I couldn't really find anything. But have they been giving up a bunch of sacks?
I would say it's more of the run game. It's so hard, in Travis, all it takes is a little crease, and he's gone. So he really makes them look a lot better than they are.
Yeah.
But they just haven't been clicking this year. And I know they're young, and I would expect that. They're going to be back. But that's a really good way for Ohio State to take advantage of Clemson's offense.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah. Not let routes develop. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I noticed that, when Etienne announced he was coming back, it's like, oh my gosh, like this dude destroyed everybody last year, and now he's coming back, and they're going to be that much better. And then you've got this, offensive line that hasn't played many games, and it's very inexperienced, and they've got the 65th rushing offense in the country. And I think that's really because Etienne obviously is not bad. It's really due to the offensive line play, and I certainly think that is advantage Ohio State there because Haskell Garrett has been playing out of his mind. Tommy Togiai has been playing out of his mind. Those are 2 guys who've really emerged this year. And Haskell Garrett wasn't even supposed to play this year. He got shot in the face, and he's been having to drink milkshakes and different things like that to be able to, because he's missing teeth. So it's just amazing that he's been playing. He's been playing great. Nobody even thought that those 2 guys would be the guys that stepped up on that defensive line to kind of take over. But obviously, anytime you lose a player like Chase Young, you're going to take a hit, and it's going to kind of dip down your offensive or your defensive line. But yeah, for sure.
Max, I've got another thing I want to touch on.
Okay.
I guess I'd forgotten about until now. Another key role, obviously, will be Trey Sermon. He's emerged as the guy. I remember when he transferred and you sent me the picture of it, and I was like, oh wow, like that's a big pickup for Ohio State. I'd assume he's going to get more carries than Master Teague.
Yeah, and I want to say this too. Teague, like it almost seemed like I think he got hurt because as soon as Sermon started going off, and I thought, they just keep feeding him the ball, and nobody's really paying attention because Sermon was getting those huge pickups and just getting fed the ball a lot. But I think a little flare up from his injury from the preseason came up, and during the game it kind of aggravated him, and he had to be taken out. But I do imagine Sermon gets a lot of carries in this game, and I think that honestly, that's going to be a big factor of this game. Is if Ohio State can run the football, because if they're able to do that and keep their defense off the field and keep Trevor Lawrence on the sidelines and be able to, just pound the rock and be able to burn time, I think that's going to be a huge factor in this game is if they're able to establish that run game.
And it'll be Jamie Skowski. A lot of people want to talk about how, as I did touch on earlier, I kind of used the excuse Trevor Lawrence wasn't there for the Notre Dame game. Trevor Lawrence, the first one, and the Boston College game, that didn't really make a huge difference. DJ looked very good in the Notre Dame game. I think he threw for like 350 yards, just a crazy amount. The real problem was on defense. We were missing our nose guard Tyler Davis and our middle linebacker Jamie Skowski.
Mhm.
And since Skowski has come back, man, the whole defense looks different. So I would say the key matchup on that side of the ball will be Trey Sermon against middle linebacker Jamie Skowski, and we'll see how that plays out.
And you notice normal fans will tell you Trevor Lawrence wasn't there. Trevor Lawrence was there, but people who actually watched the game knows that it was those defensive guys not being there was the big key. And I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah, Notre Dame ran at will, and it was like night and day the difference between the first and the second game.
Yep. Let's see. Kind of gone over that. Kind of gone over ETN and offensive line. Okay, here's one that I want to talk about. Ohio
Okay.
State's wide receivers and Clemson's defensive backs. Now I know Clemson's got a guy, Darian Kendrick. They lost Terrell last year to the draft, and I thought he was good. But I think Ohio State's receivers played pretty well for the most part in that game, and I just think they've taken a step up this year. The receivers have, and they've got all kinds of freshman talent behind them that can step up. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Julian Fleming, those guys can step up. But Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave have been the story for the Buckeyes this year in their passing offense, and they've just been really good. I think they've gotten a lot better this year. And Darren Kendrick's obviously a first-round corner, but he can't cover both of them at the same time. So, Josh, who's going to cover either Wilson or Olave? Because I imagine they put Kendrick on Wilson. I would say he's more of the dynamic. Obviously, Olave is good, but I think you put your best corner on Wilson just because of the speed and athleticism that he's got.
Well, I will say there should be an easy choice. It should be Landon Zanders. However, Zanders, it appears, will be playing a little bit of safety in the first half because
Nolan
Turner will be out.
Yep.
So there's a few guys. We could do Fred Davis, young. That's another thing about everyone that would play that position would be a young guy. Fred Davis, a young guy. Maybe Sheridan Jones. Let's see who I may be forgetting, but
yeah. I just think that
it would appear to be someone who could get picked on to an extent. They'll have to
step up.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too is I think if Fields just can get the ball to the wide receivers, and he was good all last year, so I'm gonna trust the Fields that I've always known and always seen. And even though he's had these past two games that have just kind of been bad, I think he wants to come out and make a statement because he finished 7th in Heisman voting. He didn't have a great game. Everybody's kind of doubting him right now. Ohio State's getting doubted as a whole right now. Dabo Swinney ranked Ohio State 11th. Dan Mullen doesn't think.
That's another thing I wanted to talk about.
Yeah. Ohio State ain't no bigger than USC, if not on the same level. Keyshawn Johnson said that. Dan Mullen jabs OSU after LSU lost. He seemed to get rewarded for not playing this year. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, you can just scroll through of all the different jabs that are being taken at Ohio State. And really, I think, I don't know. I don't necessarily think this is biased. I think they're the ones kind of getting picked off in the playoff this year because, they're the team with the only playing 6 games, and people are just kind of wondering what this Ohio State team does. So I think this is their time to go out and say, hey, put the foot on the gas and make a statement.
Yeah, that's the thing I wanted to touch on. It's so uncharacteristic of Dabo to be just putting out bulletin board material like fanning the flames. I mean, it's really crazy how we're just, and I get it. I completely understand where he's coming from. Ohio State played less games. I understand where Jimbo Fisher comes from. I also understand where Ohio State and Ryan Day come from. And, it wasn't their fault. I guess back in August, I believe Ohio State's AD voted to not play, I believe. But it was only Nebraska and Iowa, I think. And so it wouldn't have mattered anyway. The Big Ten as a whole decided they weren't going to play. And if you want to really blame someone, I think I said AD, it might have been president.
Yep.
You blame the president, you blame the Big Ten commissioner, but I don't think you take it out on the team.
Yeah.
And I think you're kind of going on a stretch on the eye test, but that was supposed to be the team this year. Like Ohio State was supposed to be the team to beat. And they haven't really proven, Texas A&M already got their shot to play Alabama. They lost by 21 at home. And so if you really want a team that will threaten, as a Clemson fan, I would rather play Texas A&M than Ohio State.
And I think that I want to say something real quick. I think that's kind of what – I think that's more of it. Not saying that, that's a lie. I think that he was trying to say, obviously Dabo would rather play Texas A&M, so I think he would try to push for those guys to get the playoffs. So it's it's easier ride. I mean, anybody would, I mean, who would you, if I held a gun to your head and said, would you rather take Ohio State or Texas A&M to play against? I mean, it's not that hard of a question in my opinion. So I think that had to kind of do with it too.
Yeah, I understand it. If I had to do the playoff, I guess I would do it exactly how it is. I think that's probably about right. But I completely understand where Texas A&M comes from. But if we're going off of the best 4 teams, which we should be, we have them, I think.
Yep, I agree. Totally. I just wanted to I want to show this to I don't know if you can see that or not. Maybe not. But
my screen has refrozen.
Okay. Well, I don't know if the podcast will be able to see it, but that is up in the Woody. It is PFF's tweet of Clemson head coach Dabo Swinney ranked Ohio State 11th in his coach's poll. So it's up. It's bulletin board material now. So they've got all the reason in the world to have motivation for this game. So he just fed it to him. So hopefully that'll pan out for him. I don't think there's really anything else. Let's see if I want to.
Yes.
Anything else?
Prediction, real quick.
Okay, you want to do that? Okay.
Yeah. What is the line right now?
I think the line's 7.5.
Oh my gosh. Ooh.
Yep. Oh, I got some things I want to talk about. Do you have some time?
Yeah, I've got time.
All right. So I said I watched the Ohio State Clemson game over. I watched every play. It took me a long time to watch it too. I'll tell you what, dude. I couldn't get past the first 10 minutes of like just straight plays in like 30 minutes. So I took my time on it. I watched a lot of the details. Halfley said this. I think he might have said it this year, maybe last year after the game. They didn't have a spy on, or not a spy, but they weren't prepared for Trevor Lawrence to run the way he did in that game. And Josh, I promise you, they ran the same read option play 10 times in that game with Etienne. It was like this little pitch thing. They'd run it out and he'd fake it and he'd take it, or he'd pitch it out to Etienne. You know what I'm talking about? They ran that same play like 10 times.
Wow.
In Ohio State couldn't stop it because they hadn't prepared for it. But this time around, that is a huge thing that they need to prepare for, is that right there. And honestly and truthfully, that scares me more than Etienne running the ball, is Trevor Lawrence getting out in space and running it, because he's huge. And Josh Proctor is going to be the safety there. And I imagine if Marcus Hooker can play, I can't imagine them playing much single high safety with the way their secondary is played this year. They'll probably have either Marcus Hooker and Josh Proctor, or Proctor and Lathan Ransom, who played last week and actually did a pretty good job. But they're going to have to play a lot of that, and they're going to for sure have to take control of Trevor Lawrence running the ball and limit him to that, and kind of take away that in his game. Um, let's see. What's some other things that I saw? Okay, yeah, they played a lot of man last year. Ohio State did. Obviously, because I had three, first round draft picks at the corner spot, which is insane.
Mhm.
Akuda, Arnett, and now Wade, who's returned this year, who they need to put on Amari Rogers. And if they do not, I will lose my mind because you cannot have Marcus Williamson following Clemson's best receiver on offense. Like, I get it. Sean Wade's supposed to be the outside corner guy, but you have to put him on their best player. I think I'd much rather take Sean Wade on Amari Rogers versus a Marcus Williams on Amari Rogers because he's a slot guy, and put Williamson on EJ and then have Seven Banks on Powell. I think that I'd take that matchup, but that's one thing they need to do. And if Wade isn't following, and Wade to me plays better in the slot anyways, so I think that would help him too. But that'd be a big thing and a big matchup to see who's kind of following around Amari Rogers in the slot. Ran a lot of option plays with Lawrence and ETNR just said that. Expect a lot more zone from Ohio State. And I don't think this will hurt them as bad because, thank God we don't have to go against Justin Ross and T. Higgins this year with the way that Ohio State secondary has been playing, because you don't know what you're going to get out of them sometimes. And I think that's going to help them a little bit too, is not having to go against, those 6'4", 6'5" guys that can just go up and get it. Another thing I was watching, when Trevor Lawrence misses, he misses it on like quick passes around like 10 to 15 yards. And that goes back to some throws in the Syracuse game. A lot of the NFL guys were talking about it, and the analysts. I think he doesn't let he kind of like throws it too much with his other upper body and doesn't let his lower half get involved too much, so it sails on him, if you've noticed that at all. But he doesn't miss very much, obviously, but when he does, it is on those shorter quick throws, and he's just letting it rip and it just sails from him. So if Ohio State is able to force tighter windows, obviously he's going to get it in those sometimes, but I think that's going to be a big part, because I really do think this passing game is more of Trevor Lawrence than the wide receivers of Clemson, versus last year. It's kind of like a balance of the both of them. Let's see. Dobbins' ability to run around the corner last year was huge and fooled the Clemson defense, which allowed him to break off two big runs. He was able to run the counter play very productively. I'm sure you remember the play where they're all full. The offensive line was pushing to the right, and Dobbins cut it back, and it was him and Xavier Thomas one-on-one. He just made that cut and just bursted into the secondary and got to the next level and was able to score that touchdown. I don't know if Sermon has that ability to be able to score on that play, but I know he has the jump cut ability to be able to make that first guy miss. And I was talking to another Clemson fan, and we don't really have to go into detail about this, but I heard that was like one of the knocks on Xavier Thomas's game is what he does in the run game. He's a little better in the pass game than he is pass rushing than he is against run defense. I don't know if that's right or not, but
yeah. And Xavier's had a kind of a tough year. I know he had COVID for like a while,
and he had strep throat too, right?
Yeah, he had a bad case of it, and he just looked really bad this year. I wouldn't write him off as a bust or anything, but it's been a rough year for him.
Yeah. Let's see. Clemson started sacking the box, which helped the run, which I think will be kind of big for Fields if they're able to kind of force Clemson to start stacking the box and open up the pass game. And another thing too is, oh my goodness, I watched so many times where Fields can I'm like, if that's this year, he's taking off and taking that for 10, 15 yards, or he's taking that for a touchdown. And it's those times in the red zone do you remember the play when Olave broke off it was a little like 3 and out, and it was deflected. It was when they had to kick the field goal, and they should have went up. There was like nobody in Fields' area, but because he didn't have the ability to run them because he was hurt, he had to make that throw, and it was deflected, and
Okay.
they were
Yeah.
forced
I know
to
what you're talking about.
kick field goals several times. And I think that's another thing too this year is they're gonna have to spy Fields this year compared to last year, which they didn't really have to, because he's gonna take off a lot more times and be able to use his legs, which is gonna be huge advantage for him this year compared to last year. So I expect that to help them out. But I think that's pretty much all I've got for that, for the film, and kind of breaking that down in comparison to
Mhm.
this year. But you said the line. I'll look at it right here on ESPN. It is 7.5, and Clemson is favored. And ESPN has the matchup predictor is 50% split in half.
What?
Yep, I saw
Yeah, I
that.
can see that.
So, do you want to make picks, or you want to wait for picks, or what do you want to do? Because
I'll make it, but I think it's pretty obvious. Same way I went last year. I guess I'm just a homer. I
I am too.
would say Clemson. Let's see, a good score. Uh, I would say this score sounds bad, but it'll probably be closer than the score sounds. Probably about a 35-23 game,
Okay.
35-26, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Um, but Clemson pulls away late, and it's a close game.
Okay. So this kind of adds into my prediction because last year, and most people will agree with this statement, I think Ohio State was the more talented team in last year's
Yeah.
game, and they didn't come out on the winning side of that game. And I think it's the opposite this year, especially with the defense, is that I think Clemson might be a little more, not necessarily obviously like a 2-4-7 talent stuff, but I think they're more put together than Ohio State is this year. And to me, they won that game last year. Ohio State definitely can win this game this year. It's not just a write off. But with
Mhm.
everything going on, Fields seventh, and I mean, the list goes on, and things that nobody believes in Ohio State to win this game. Nobody thinks Fields is good anymore. It just goes on. I think that's
Mhm.
it's just gonna eventually just break them into playing, angry and fired up. I mean, there's just so much stuff out there now for a reason for them to go out there and just put their foot on Clemson's throats. And I think that they will. I think it's going to be a higher scoring game, but not like crazy, not like the Florida Alabama game. I think it's going to be higher scoring than last year. So I'm going to go. Hmm, I think it's going to be a really close game, though, for sure. I think it's going to be like 38-35, and it might be even closer than that. I could honestly see it being like a 1 point game like Ohio State had against Penn State. I can see like a late drive and a field goal, or a late drive and a touchdown, or something like that. But this game is going to be really close. So I'm going to go with, yeah, that sounds good. 38-35. I think Clemson's going to be able to score some points on Ohio State's defense, which has kind of been lackluster this year. But Ohio State's going to be able to come
Mhm.
up with some stops, and uh, Ohio State's going to be able to put some points on the board. And I think Fields is going to get it together with his receiver back.
All right.
All right, guys. I think that's going to do it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Kind of broke down a little bit of everything in this game, made our picks. Let's go ahead and make our Notre Dame Alabama picks, because we didn't really do that, and I guess we can go ahead and get that out the way.
Okay. Alabama.
Oh yeah,
Cover. I
Alabama.
don't know what the spread is,
Well,
but
I
cover.
want to see what the line is on that game. Let's
Not enough.
see. Yeah.
Here, I'll check it.
Oh
Uh,
man. Let's
it
see.
is 19 and a half. FPI has Alabama at an 81% chance,
Hmm.
but a 19 and a half spread.
Yeah. I think
Bama
that game is
cover.
going to be a blowout, but I do I do honestly think they're going to have an easier time against Alabama's defense than they had with Clemson's defense. I think Clemson's defense is better than Alabama's, especially running the ball. I think they're probably going to have an easier time, but I think Alabama's just going to put a ton of points up on the board. So I'm gonna go with what was the LSU Oklahoma score last year?
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was going to say it'll be just like that.
It's gonna be that game over again.
I was going to say 63-24.
That sounds like a. Let's see, LSU Oklahoma. It was 63-28. So I think I'm gonna go 58 to 58-28. I think LSU's defense last year was better than Alabama's defense this year. So that kind of adds into why they get a little more on that side of the ball. So that's going to do it. That's it. We'll check in. I'll check in again after we get done with these playoff games and see the results and all that. We can talk about it. But yeah, that's going to be it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Glad to be back and glad to be talking football this year, especially with everything going on, able to play it. So we'll see you next time. Have a good one.